Jack Shaw has been a technology futurist for over 30 years, and you're a young guy, so you started at a very young age. Jack worked and spoken for and consulted such companies locally as MSA, Dun & Bradstreet Software, Harbinger, CA Technologies, Fiserv, IBM, and Infor, helping them in many ways, both in terms of clients better understanding their clients and plan for strategic business impacts for emerging technologies. At the start of this year, over 12,000 meeting planners, executives, and conference attendees voted Jack as one of the world's top 5 technology futurists. So I think that says a lot. So without further ado, I'd like to call on our friend and good TAG supporter, Jack Shaw.
Thank you, Tina. A great American, Yogi Berra, once said, "Making predictions is very hard, especially about the future." Part of the reason for that is if we don't understand where we've been, it's very difficult to know where we're going. This is the Queen Elizabeth. For 50 years in the first half of the 20th century, she and her sister ocean liners dominated the market for transatlantic business travel. As late as the mid-1950s, the senior executives at any of the ocean liner companies would have told you that business travelers would never forego crossing the Atlantic by ship and give up traveling in comfort, indeed in luxury, and be able to arrive at their destination in less than a week. Until August 1957, when Pan American Airlines introduced Boeing 707 nonstop jet service from New York to London in 8 hours, and in 6 months, the transatlantic shipping business lost 90% of their business travelers. New technologies can indeed have a profound and rapid impact on any industry. Now, about the same time that that first jet air service was being introduced, we began to see the first use of computers in American businesses. And from the late 50s through the 1970s, it was the predominant form of business technology, followed by a second wave of technology, PCs, that came along starting in the early 80s. And by the 1990s, we began to see client-server computing, enterprise application integration, the knitting together of computing resources within the 4 walls of the enterprise as the third wave of business technology. And as we all recall so well, starting in the late 90s and on into the 2000s, the latest and biggest wave yet, the internet and the World Wide Web, transforming business and society around the world. Now, each wave of business technology has 3 major considerations in common with all of the other waves. First of all, each one requires deployment of a critical mass of its predecessor waves in order to achieve rapid growth and broad acceptance. Secondly, each introduces new concepts, terminology, opportunities, and concerns. And third, each wave of technology has an exponentially greater impact on business and society than its predecessors, even if it's not always obvious at the beginning of the process. Now, here in Atlanta, we've had a lot of experience with that. And we've had organizations involved in some of the driving factors that have caused the changes in technology we've seen over the years. Just in the past 20 years, for example, we've seen a decrease in bandwidth cost of 50 times. We've seen a decrease in the cost of computing of over 3,000 times. And we've seen a decrease in the cost of storage of almost 20,000 times compared to where we were 20 years ago. In fact, just last week, it was announced the world's first 4 terabyte flash drive Another factor that is driving change is the move toward mobile computing. Just last spring, a year ago, was the 40th anniversary of the first cell phone call ever made. And in those 40 years, out of the 7 billion people now living on this planet, some 4 billion already use mobile phones. Let me put that in context for you. The toothbrush was invented 5,000 years ago in Egypt. And over the course of the past 5,000 years, use of the toothbrush has spread to the point where now there are 3.5 billion people in the world that own toothbrushes. Now, I want you to think about what this means. Aside from the fact that clearly the growth in mobile phones vastly exceeds the rate of growth of use of the toothbrush, it also means that if you dial a mobile phone number at random somewhere in the world, the odds are 1 in 8 that the person who answers the phone does not own a toothbrush. You may be glad you're talking to them on the phone and not in person. Well, we're going to talk about the role Atlanta technology companies have had for over 30 years now in helping to lead the development and deployment of emerging technologies. But I'm not going to talk about the many great Atlanta companies that have developed already well-deserved global reputations for the work they've done. I am going to take some time to talk about several Atlanta companies that I think of as hidden gems, companies that are developing technologies that I think have the potential to bring about transformational change over the course of the next 5 to 10 years. Now, one of the first companies I'd like to talk about is ARC. ARC is in the area of marketing services and technology, and they provide marketing consulting services, but they also provide a series of marketing-related technologies, including portals and collaboration, social media, marketing automation, and content management systems. And ARC recently recognized a problem in the market, and I'd like to share with you a brief video illustrating that issue.
This is Greg, the very stressed IT manager. Sandy is the marketing manager, and this department wants to update their old websites and microsites after 5 years of living in oblivion. And worst of all, they want to do it fast, just in time for their new product launch. Greg's team recently implemented Sitecore for the marketing department, and they're enthusiastic about using their new CMS, leveraging Sitecore's analytics to better understand their users and being able to finally migrate all of their old data sites into Sitecore. For Greg and his team, however, making a large-scale migration meant hundreds, maybe thousands of hours coding and testing. There has got to be another option. Sandy, the overwhelmed marketing manager, she needs to ensure her content contributors and editors are able to successfully manage all of the site's content she's in charge of. She also has to figure out a way to train everyone on the new CMS they're moving a lot of sites to, and also a way to explain to her boss why they can't move some of their old websites to the new CMS and therefore can't edit them. For Sandy, this means having no control or power over the sites they can't re-platform and no updates to the marketing messaging.
Wouldn't it be great if there was a quick and easy way to manage and update the content of your existing legacy websites?
Adding cutting-edge analytics without having to migrate or even perform major coding surgery?
Well, ARC decided it would be great, and they created a tool called CMS Anywhere. So when you've got large organizations with multiple websites, multiple divisions, multiple geographical locations, even multiple content management platforms, you've got a coordination problem. But what they do is that whenever a visitor goes to any one of those affiliated servers and requests information, that server then passes a page with a CMS Anywhere tag associated back to the browser. What that does is it requests a beacon script from the CMS Anywhere server, as well as recording a hit on the affiliate server. That beacon script is passed back to the browser at that point, where it fires off stylers and replacers to update the page so that the look and feel of that page is consistent with the branding for the organization as a whole. as well as triggering pixels that report additional information back to the CMS Anywhere server. Here's an example of one of their clients' websites, one of the affiliate websites of their client, before using CMS Anywhere and after applying it. Same information, but with a look and feel that's now consistent with the enterprise branding position. But it's about much more than just page styling. It's about having a common interface that allows for marketing updates for a large number of different websites that a large organization may have to deal with. And it's even more importantly about having a 360-degree view of the customer, so that regardless of which one of numerous affiliate sites a customer might visit, there's a coherent, cohesive view of all of that customer's interactions with the enterprise as a whole. A big step forward, Arc CMS Anywhere. Now, another company I want to talk about, and we'll get to talking about them in a minute, is Safely Locked. Before we talk specifically about Safely Locked, let me ask you a question. Anybody here have to update any of your passwords in the last few weeks? Anybody have to make any password changes? Yeah, a few of you? Okay. Have you heard about the Heartbleed challenge? The issue there, of course, is that OpenSSL was discovered a couple of months ago, had a serious security flaw. The software that's supposed to be providing security for many of the major websites in the world had a serious hole in it. Basically, in very simple terms, here's what happened. In order to keep the connection open and continue, rather than have to reestablish a connection when somebody is logged in through OpenSSL to a website, you can do what's called a heartbeat. And it's simply where the requesting person or system, in this case we're going to call it user Meg, says, hey, server, you still there? If so, reply with the word potato. That's 6 letters long. Server says, okay, user Meg wants the word potato. Here's potato. Here's those 6 letters. Okay, I want to keep the connection open. Reply with the word bird. Okay, user Meg wants the word bird. Here's the word bird coming back, 4 letters. Then user Meg starts thinking about it a little bit. Server, are you still there? If so, reply with the word hat, 500 letters. The system would reply with hat and the next 497 characters in memory, whatever that may be, even if it's things such as the administrator is setting the server's master key to thus and so, or these users are changing their passwords to such and such. And worse than that, entirely untraceable. Absolutely no way to know whether anybody has broken in and gotten passwords, security keys, and so forth with the Heartbleed bug. Now, it's been fixed, and the fix for the most part has been deployed, but there are limited strengths, limited capabilities with the basic approach that's still been taken, not just for the 20 years or so since the internet. Going back to my 30 years ago, my early days of EDI, I couldn't understand why, or in technology, I couldn't understand why people were using what is sometimes referred to as castle and moat technology. And the cost is great, a couple of $100 per record per breach. And since the average breach exposes nearly 30,000 records, you're talking about over $5 million per breach that it costs large organizations. Of course, it costs the CEO of Target a lot more than that, as we've heard. Part of the reason is it can take over a year on the average between the time a breach takes place and when it happens. The notion behind castle and moat security is that if we can just build the castle, the moat, strong enough, if we can make the walls high enough and thick enough, then we can be secure. But it may be a false sense of security that we've developed.
Is this it? Is this all you can conjure, Saruman?
Because those who are trying to break in may be more clever than we've realized. And they may come up with new and different approaches we haven't thought about to try to breach that security wall. We may make all the efforts we can to try to prevent those clever breaches. But all too often, they're still going to fall short. And we all know what happens once the goblins breach the wall and get inside. They kill the men, rape the women, and eat the children. The same principle has been what's been behind our information technology. It's not about protecting people from getting into your infrastructure, especially when there's many authorized people you want to be able to get into your infrastructure. It's about protecting the underlying data about it. And the nice thing about the approach that Safety Locked has taken is that they're providing true end-to-end encryption. Browser-based, works on any platform, file size and type agnostic, but the encryption and decryption takes place on the client side. And what that means is that data is encrypted both at rest and while it is moving between point A and point B. It doesn't matter if somebody can get inside the infrastructure if they still can't make any sense out of what they see there, just encrypted data. It also means that Safely Locked needs zero knowledge of either the data, of course, or even the keys that are used to encrypt it or decrypt it. This is why I refer to this as trust-free security. You don't have to trust Safely Locked, or any other third party. They also provide provenance attestation and an irrefutable timestamp, which means you've got a full audit trail, a chain of custody. So at the same time, you've got completely secure privacy on the data as it is moving. You have exact, specific, provable times that this information was sent from this point A to that point B at this particular point in time. Safely Send It is a solution for sharing, for sending files and email and so forth. Safely Share It is for secure file and folder sharing, and Safely Share It Plus combines the two. Safely Locked, trust-free security for 21st century digital systems and processes of the type we're going to be looking at. We've heard a lot about the Internet of Things. And a lot of people say, well, what things are we talking about? I mean, I've already got my phone connected to the Internet. I've got my tablet connected to the Internet. What else do we want to connect to the Internet? It's not just information technology devices. It is literally everything. Security information, retail, transportation, industrial, healthcare, consumer, energy, buildings themselves. Every object larger than microscopic size can have a submicroscopic radio transmitter associated with it, integrated into it in many cases, that conveys who am I, what am I, where am I, what's my current condition, who owns me at the moment, and continually communicating that information. So in terms of global connectivity, for a century after the invention of the telephone, we were able to connect places by hard wires. In the last 10 or 15 years, we've seen the explosion from 1 billion places to 5 billion people connected to the internet. And yet it's projected that by 2020, that 5 billion people will be accompanied by somewhere between 25 and 50 billion physical objects also connected to the internet. One of the most important ones, in my opinion, of which will be the smart wine shelf. Let's keep our priorities straight here, people. Why would we want a smart wine shelf to talk to the internet? The reason is that you can come in with an app on your smartphone or your tablet to indicate what your preferences are for wine, maybe what you're planning to have that dinner for dinner that evening, and it will come up with recommendations and highlight by lighting up the bottles which bottles of wine are the best match for your particular preferences and needs. and then allow you to look at the specific details on a given bottle that it has recommended for you. So that's an example of connecting the Internet of Things to, for people to benefit from that. There's another important way in which things and digital systems need to be bridged, and that is augmented reality. How many people here have ever watched a football game and seen a display on your TV that looks like this? Have you? Okay. All right. What about that yellow line, the blue line, the part that says 3rd and 5, 7 seconds left before the snap? Okay. That is not painted on the field. I had to explain this a few times when they first showed up with those yellow lines. But this is a form of augmented reality. They digitally augment the physical reality that's being displayed through the television screen. Well, we're very fortunate to have a leader in augmented reality right here in Atlanta in the form of Merlin Mobility. And they're doing a number of clever things in the areas of marketing and technical support. And I'll show you a couple of examples. I do have to say that you really need to see this in person because it is much more impressive when you see it in person. But this is a reasonable approximation to take a quick look at the video.
Hi there. I'm Wendy. Now that's happiness.
They also have an application where you can use, in effect, a virtual reality, augmented reality capability to have a vending machine, for example. Look at what that vending machine would look like in place in a business. Or a wine cooler, perhaps to store the wine you bought from the Smart Wine shelf and see what it would look like on your kitchen counter with or without the bottles of wine still in it. They also have very powerful tools for technical support.
Merlin embeds augmented reality into the existing Sandpiper pump identification and rebuild kit application. Scanning the QR code affixed to the pump initiates the 3D augmented reality experience. While pointing the mobile device directly at the pump, physical instructions are overlaid on top of it, bridging the gap between traditional 2D instructions and 3D physical objects. Merlin utilizes techniques such as diminished reality to occlude the virtually removed parts. In our next example, we'll demonstrate pump operation, where physical objects, such as the pump, can be masked to reveal a cutaway that illustrates operations such as diaphragm, contraction, and expansion cycles, and how those cycles relate to the flow of liquid within the pump.
With so many engineers and mechanics, baby boomers getting ready to retire, and not enough people with those kinds of technical skills coming up, augmented reality like this can be a very powerful tool for helping to supplant that lost knowledge and help the younger, less experienced people do the right things with the technical support they have. From augmented reality, Merlin Mobility. Now, another one of the things that we're interested in keeping track of are transportation-related things, our vehicles and the infrastructure that we use in order to be able to move around urban areas. This is what MetroTech helps us address with road traffic video analytics. There are serious traffic and safety concerns. Over 30% of time and fuel spent driving is wasted while cars are sitting in traffic. Now, I know fortunately we never have this problem in Atlanta. But if on occasion you find yourself stuck in rush hour traffic, you could appreciate the value of having better information about the traffic flows, current and projected, in order to find the best route home at the end of the evening. This is what MetroTech has done. They've come up with the notion of capturing data through video analytics from the video cameras that already exist on many roads and at many intersections, analyzing that data and applying predictive analytics and big data processing capabilities to be able to provide that information to those people who are going to need it. They've patented the concept of the IntelliSection, the intelligent intersection, so that by monitoring traffic flows through various different intersections and projecting down the road, they can feed data, for example, to the people who are responsible for managing the traffic light systems to optimize the flow of traffic through the system. Every time you sit at a traffic light with nobody coming by in the middle of the night and the light is red, you know that if you go through it, the only person coming by will be the police person to give you the ticket. You will appreciate this kind of technology. They've already deployed it in hundreds of locations throughout Santa Clara County for vehicle integration, mobile applications, and traffic data analytics, as well as right here in Atlanta. And if anybody has ever tried to drive on Peachtree Street, say between Piedmont and Lenox at rush hour, not a lot of fun, but here you can see some of the video analytics that's taking place, in this case at the corner of Peachtree and Piedmont. So here's a four-way screen showing all four directions and providing information about which traffic is moving through what lanes, how many are taking left turns, how many cars. Here we zoom in more closely, and if you look on the right side of the upper photograph, you can see how the video analytics have identified and counted the specific individual number of cars there, and then put themselves in a position to feed that data to those people who need it. So what they're doing is they're leveraging legacy investments that can also be added to it with low-cost video cameras, much less expensive than doing such things as putting sensors under the asphalt. And develop systems that allow everyone from traffic controllers to people looking for directions to even connected cars to be able to have the data that they need to be able to make their decisions and get the maximum value out of those legacy investments. Facilitating the flow of traffic through urban areas, MetroTech with road traffic video analytics. And as you'll see soon, it's going to become even more important in the near future. Well, most of us would agree that one of the most important things in our own lives is our own physical bodies. I mean, if you have to stop to think about it, if there's one thing you really particularly care about, it's your body. You want it to be healthy. And there's a variety of tools that are emerging in the healthcare field to help us do a better job of managing our health. Everything from clothing to furniture to devices like intelligent razors and tongue scrapers that can be used to monitor and manage your health. One of the things that people have tried to do for many years is come up with remote, non-contact patient monitoring. Being able to, without any kind of invasive process or procedure, monitor someone's health. And here's an excellent example of what I'm talking about.
Pulse is almost gone. How is he? Severe heart damage. Signs of congestion in both lungs. Evidence of massive circulatory collapse.
The powerful, compact medical scanner has been a key tool for the science fiction doctors of Star Trek. From Bones and Crusher to Bashir, played by Siddig El-Fadil.
I should think the tricorder will be a real thing in the future, a diagnostic device which is really based on scanning. How on earth they're going to do that is for them to work.
Well, it is for them to work out. And they're not there yet, but Sensiotech has in fact worked out what I consider to be at least a small step in the direction of the tricorder. It's the world's first FDA-cleared non-contact vital signs monitor. Measures heart and lung function, torso movements, bed exits. The way it works is that the panel actually transmits very low energy radar waves into the patient's body, which bounce back and are recorded every 2 nanoseconds. And pattern analytics are used to extract meaningful data from this, pass it into a web server, which generates decision support information for medical practitioners, as well as personal data for that patient's electronic medical record, and depersonalized big data that can be passed in for various different medical and pharmaceutical analytic techniques. But they haven't looked only at the design of the physical sensor panel itself. They've looked at the entire set of processes and mechanisms around it to make sure that they've got both the patient management tools and the real-time data for vitals monitoring, eliminating pressure ulcers, fall prevention, and so forth. In development, they're even looking at a tool that will work for preemies. So we may no longer have to see tiny little guys like the one on the left all wired up, but simply have them lying on or near a sensor device by Sensiotech, remote non-contact patient monitoring.